Okay guys, let's talk about another underrated lens today. This is the Nikon 70-210 f4-5.6 D lens. Okay, pay attention. This is the D version that focuses much faster than the non-D version. So if you're going to get it, look for the D version. I picked this up for 75 bucks. I think it's one of the best deals available in the entire Nikon F-mount lineup. It's an older lens, but it still performs really well. It's made in Japan, and we're going to talk about the good, the bad. We're going to talk about some tips for getting the best performance out of this lens, and also finally I'll show you guys some sample images that I've taken just to prove to you that yeah, this is actually one of the best underrated bargains in the whole lineup. This is a push-pull design. What does that mean? Push to zoom, pull to zoom out. Push to zoom, pull to zoom out. Strangely satisfying. Some of you may find this an oddly familiar motion. The minimum close focus distance is 1.2 meters or 4 feet. 62mm filter diameter. This is an old school lens, so you still have the aperture ring on there. Pretty satisfying, even though it's all controlled digitally these days in camera. Very smooth manual focusing ring, even though I generally use this lens in autofocus. Very sturdy construction, available on eBay for 75 bucks. I picked this up in what was called mint condition. Really, it looked almost brand new. Lens hardly looked used. I think you'd be pretty safe buying it in quote-unquote excellent condition. The construction of this lens is very solid. Nothing rattles, nothing wobbles. You can feel this was a quality product. Even though it's an older design, it just inspires a lot more confidence than today's plasticky G lenses. Very lightweight, 590 grams, that's 21 ounces. Super useful. The fact that this is a relatively compact, lightweight lens makes it ideal for travel. You can do great landscape shots with it. Just set it to f8 and you're good to go. It's going to be super sharp at that aperture. You get a very usable zoom range. Guys, if you don't have a telephoto, you've never experimented with a telephoto, or your lens collection consists mostly of prime lenses, I think you owe it to yourself to try a telephoto. There's just so many creative opportunities. Flaring and ghosting were pretty minimal. I didn't notice much. I did notice some heavy chromatic aberration, but we'll get into that when we talk about the negatives. First one, the one that stands out the most is, yeah, there is no VR. There's no stabilization. There's no vibration reduction on this lens. So you're going to have to actually hold still when you're taking pictures. It does make it less usable in nighttime, but you know what? Photographers have survived for many decades with no vibration reduction, so I don't really see it as a negative. But yeah, it is something to point out. If you are looking for a lens, a telephoto lens with VR, the next step up would be the 70-300 VR from Nikon, and then one level above would be the newer AF-P lens. Another negative is the fact that it's a variable aperture lens, right? It's not a constant f4. There is a version of Nikon 70-210mm that is a constant f4, which might be better if you're focused on portraits. I believe it focuses a bit slower and it's not as easy to find, and I think it's going to be a bit more expensive on the used market, but it does exist. There is distortion, as you'll see in the sample images at the long end. After you get past 105 millimeters or so, there is some significant pincushion distortion. It's correctable with software, but there is no lens profile for this lens in Adobe Camera Raw. So you will have to use Affinity, Darktable, Raw Therapy, all these programs that use the Lens Fund database. I noticed some pretty heavy chromatic aberration. I mean, these days it's really easily correctable in software, but Just wanted to point out that it's there. One negative aspect of the push-pull designs is that they basically function as a vacuum cleaner, sucking dust into the lens. Now, as long as you're careful and you don't use it in the desert, I think you'll be okay. But that's something to consider if you're in really dusty environments. Push-pull lenses generally accumulate dust faster. That's why you'll see a lot of those 35-70 2.8 lenses, professional ones, that are quite dusty. It's very hard to find a clean sample of those today because those were used in just about every professional environment. But these, as consumer lenses, I don't think they were put through their paces too hard. Okay guys, so this is what the lens looks like mounted to a D750. I think it's a pretty nice package overall. Doesn't look too intimidating. Certainly not as compact as shooting with one of the prime lenses, but very comfortable. Doesn't imbalance the camera too much, but not too bad considering the zoom range you're getting. Once again, push. Okay, well, now you can see this is the lens at its most phallic setting. Let's go back. Now you'll notice right away that you're getting some kind of error message when you mount this to your camera. I've done this on purpose just to show you why. This is because you need to control the aperture automatically in camera, not manually on the lens. So what you do to get this error to go away, you set your aperture here to the smallest setting, f32, and then the error goes away and you're good to go. Then there's even a tab here on the lens itself that you can lock to lock the aperture setting so you don't get that error message again. Let's talk about the focusing speed real quick. This thing is snappy, no problems at all. You want to make sure that you're using the best technique possible. First thing is set your shutter speed to at least 1 over the focal length, right? So if you're shooting at 70 millimeters, which is the widest setting, don't go any slower than an 80th of a second. And if you're shooting at the zoomed out focal length of 200, set your shutter speed to at least 1 over 200 or 250. You know, just if you want to be really safe, you can set your camera to shoot in continuous mode, take a few pictures, and choose the sharpest one later. Finally, you actually want to hold your camera properly. So how do you do that? You know, you don't have to worry about this stuff with prime lenses, but once you get into heavier lenses or zoom lenses, you want to make sure you're holding the camera with your right hand, supporting it with the left hand, supporting the lens with your left hand, and then bracing the whole setup against your body. Have your elbows actually tucked in, touching the sides of your body, and shoot as you breathe out. Right? So you're focused on the subject, breathing out. There you go. That's how you get the sharpest results. These are all straight out of camera JPEGs, no editing, no funny business, no effects. You can see the image and then see 100% crop of the same image. It's a very fun lens to use, especially if you want to compress the foreground and background, something you don't get very often with focal lengths like 28, which is what everyone's focal length is these days on their smartphone, or even prime lenses. You know, we generally buy primes that are in the 35, 50, 85 range, thereabouts. So this provides a whole new perspective. It's a lot of fun for not much money at all. You can even use it, as I've done here, for portraiture. You really have to watch your backgrounds, especially with the longer lenses like this. If you're trying to get background blur, don't have too many trees or branches in the background because it will distract from the subject. I was more than happy with the sharpness, the performance, the out of focus areas. I mean, there's very little to complain about here, and considering the price you're paying, I don't think you should be complaining at all. This is an awesome lens, guys. It's sharp, it's light, it's telephoto on a budget. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.